Okay, so welcome to our one of our summer webinar series. This is actually the second instance of a look at universal design for learning and course design. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the presentation. So hopefully following this session, I want you to be able to do four things. I want you to be able to go tell somebody what universal design for learning is, be able to define it. I want you to be able to describe the three principles that are related to UDL. What's the relationship between this concept and course design? And I want you to be able to take away some resources that you can use and keeping in mind UDL when you're creating courses for your students. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about what universal design for learning is. So basically, it's a set of principles that gives everyone the opportunity to learn. So when you're setting up your courses, you're not only keeping in mind the students who, they come in, like with accessibility restraints or things that when they talk to student disability services and they need those accommodations, you're basically keeping everyone in mind. You're keeping all the different learning styles that are present in your classroom. So you're giving everyone the opportunity to learn by doing various things in your class, and we'll talk about some of those specific things. There's a lot of influences, including government and nonprofits, that influence UDL and the way that it has been molded. Specifically, the Higher Education Act of 2008, which talks about making everything accessible for all. There's different standards set up to making websites accessible. ADA of 1990. You might be familiar with some of these with some of this legislation and or these groups, and I'm going to mention a few as we go throughout the presentation. So there's three different principles when it comes to looking at universal design for learning. The first one is the what of learning. So how people and how students and participants recognize and gather facts based upon what they're seeing in your class, what they're hearing. So basically this has to do mainly with the senses, I want to say. So how are you setting up students so that they are gathering the information, or if they come with prior knowledge, how are you setting up to where they can gather this information to be successful in your course? So the how of learning, so how they are planning and performing the task. If you want students to come in and one of your objectives is for them to basically write a persuasive essay, how are they going to be setting that up? Are you going to have different types of levels of scaffolding? Meaning, are you going to teach them how to write a thesis statement first, then include the body of the essay? So how are they planning to, how are you setting them up so they can plan and perform these tasks? And finally, the why of learning, the connection that we make in terms of our motivation, how are students challenged, how do we get them excited and interested in the learning? Are you using real world scenarios? Are you using experiential learning? Are you having them do something on the web? So these are the three basic principles of UDL, and you want to keep these three in mind when you're going to be designing your courses. On the UDL website, it has these guidelines that are listed here. So these can be used as your strategic framework for actually setting up your course design. So you can look at these different standards and we'll call them guidelines instead of standards. Those are quality matters. You can go through these different guidelines and make sure you can look specifically at them and make sure that you are setting up your course in a way that it is accessible for everybody and people to learn. So for example, if you want students to let's say you have students who, you have a course orientation video. So a course orientation video is recorded in TextSmith Relay, but you have a student who is deaf. So what you would need to do is you would need to either provide a transcript for that student for the video so that the screen reader, the words are being displayed across the screen, and or you can submit a video that you record with the software that we support called TextSmith Relay, and you can get that closed caption. So that's something, that's an example of actually making the course accessible for everybody. In personal life, when we think about this, if you watch like Netflix or you watch Hulu, I usually turn the closed captioning on. I read it. And there's been some research out there, and this is a very specific example that states that students actually, even if they don't have accommodations in your class, 80% of them turn the closed captioning items on. And I guess they, that taps into their learning style if they're auditory, and then they also like to read things. So that's one example. So you can download this guideline sheet and use this when you're setting up your courses. Any questions so far? Okay. Great. So when we're talking about, we have this overall concept of universal design for learning, but we want to talk about it in ways when we're developing the curriculum. So when you go into a class as a student, what are the things that you need to be provided with? Or us as instructors on the other side, what are we providing the students with? So one of the first ones is the goals. So these are the objectives in your class. What expectations are you setting up for the learners? And do they understand the expectations? So in a lot of our classes, we have expectations that are set by our departments, but then we also have, expectations or goals for each of the units. So specifically in each unit, what do you want students to learn? And do they understand those objectives and what you want them to learn? Are they written in a way that's understandable and clear to them? Then you go into the pedagogy and the design. So how are you teaching them? What things are you what are you going to do in terms of your pedagogy? Are you going to make them do group work? Are in your course design of an online class, is there going to be something where they have to create a video? So what are the different types of methods and things that you're learning in order for students to meet these goals? Then you have the materials. So if you have some sort of technology that you're using, what types of active learning techniques? Are they going to participate in discussion boards? What types of materials and information are you using? Readings? Are you using e-learning, e-reserves from the library? So what types of things are you going to be using to support students in these goals and the methods that you're incorporating into the class? And then finally, assessment. We want to make sure that the learners are not only learning what the objectives we set out for them to learn, but we want to make sure that we can prove that and they can show us that they're doing this. Now, this can be something as simple as a multiple choice quiz, or this can be something as intricate as a whole semester project. So basically, these four things in the curriculum, these things are all connected. So when you think about setting up your course, you're going to have the goals, and then you're going to decide what methods you need to outline in order, and what materials you need to use in order to make sure through the assessments that students are accomplishing the objectives that you have set out for them to reach. So here's an example, and I've already talked about this, about providing the closed captioning and the transcript with the videos. So this is something that you should become familiar with in doing, especially if you have videos you're, say, using from YouTube or Vimeo. You want to be sure that you're providing this information for students, and this should just become this should become a habit for you to do this. And this is related to the UDL guidelines at checkpoint 1.2. The next example is how you are setting up your actual design of your course. Does it look clean? Is it organized? Does it have that logical flow? We all know that when we get emails from students about, I can't find this, I can't find that, this is probably because your course design is not set up in a way which is understandable to your participants. Are you using things like uniform fonts throughout? That's another accessibility thing. You want to make sure that you're not using like greens and then reds. People who are colorblind, they can't see these things, so you want to make sure that you're using things that are uniform throughout your course design, and along with that, you want to create that logical flow. So in this picture, you see that I have units set up along with certain assignments that are related to those units. So the units go into the descriptive information, the content information I want them to learn, and then I have some adaptive release things set up for them. And this relates to UDL checkpoint in the guidelines 3.3. So your course is very big. Your content and the things you have to cover are very large. And if you teach in one of the larger semesters, the 16 weeks ones, it's often challenging to get it in that 16 weeks. But some of us teach in the summer and the winter sessions, and those are even shorter. So we want to make sure that with UDL and course design, that we are chunking content information that is similar in what it's talking about. We don't want to just throw everything out from, let's say, chapter 2 to students and say, learn this. You want to make sure that you chunk the information in a way that's understandable to students so that they can actually absorb and connect with the content. And you can do this through maybe some textual information, maybe some videos, maybe some podcasts, whatever your content area is, you can be creative with this. And this is also related to the UDL Guidelines Checkpoint 3.3. Another great thing to do in your classes, if you want to if you're taking the UDL approach, and this is just great in general for students, is remind them, give them provided checklists or checkpoints of what they're doing in your class. You can do this with assessments. I do these at the end of my modules for the students, making sure they can go back and they can say, did you do this? Did you submit this assignment? Did you, did you participate in this discussion board? Just giving them a checklist every module, or you have a checklist provided in your syllabus that they completed the important things, the assessments or the assignments that they're supposed to complete in your class. And again, remember, this is part of the materials. Everything is connected in the class, and making sure that they completed those things. So the objectives that you set, they're meeting the assessments, they're completing the tasks, they're being successful on those. And this is related to UDL Guidelines 3.4. So one of the things that we want to be sure that we do, and I was talking about this with the goals, is we want to make sure that the objectives that we set for students are measurable. What I mean by measurable is that we have a way to assess that. Now, like I said before, this is going to be something simply as a quiz. It could be a project, and it all depends on what you're asking students to do. So how are they going to tell me that they've set a SMART goal? Well, they're going to write a SMART goal for me. How are they going to tell me about the components of financial compatibility? Well, they're going to participate in a discussion board with their classmates, and they're going to be able to show me that they understand, that they've done the reading, that they understand this concept. And you want to make sure it's written from the student's perspective. We can get really specific and nitty-gritty when it comes to our unit level objectives. And I know we're trying to cover everything and make sure that we have everything written out that we want them to do, but make sure that it's written in a way that the students can understand. So like if they open, this module, they read these objectives, they're going to pretty much understand what they're going to be doing throughout this unit. And this is related to the checkpoint UDL Guidelines 6.1. So this is just another example of unit objectives that I've created. And one of the things that I did differently in this screen is I actually, if you look at the end of the objective, I related it back to the course level objectives so that they understand that this specific objective is meeting an overall objective of the class. So if we have something in the course, we have goals in our course from our departments, we want to make sure that our objectives are related back to those. And this is related to, again, the guidelines, checkpoint 6.1. So I'm going to take a little break right now before I go out into some of the resources for UDL. And I want to know if you have any examples or if you have any questions so far about what I've talked about with UDL and course design. You can use your microphone or you can use the chat. So any examples things that you use. Or anything that you've learned, or you know, if you've had students with accommodations in your class, modifications you've made to your course in order to accommodate them. Are there any examples, or everybody's just fresh and they're trying to figure this out? Everybody's quiet. Yeah, yeah. A lot of this stuff is very connected. It's all very connected. All right. So let me go ahead and stop this part of it, and I'm gonna, yeah, I like checklists too. It helps a lot, trust me. It eliminates the need for the students to email you and say that I do this. They just get that overall bang, 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 it's done. So they did it. Let me go ahead and share my screen with you so that I can show you some resources that I have available, and some things that are out on Blackboard that you can see that we already have built into our template. All right, so first I'm going to show you, let me share my screen. Okay. Can everybody see my screen? If you can't, let me know. So I'm actually, this should look very familiar to you if you've taught a class here. This is our course template. This is the template that's applied when we create courses. So if you don't know this already, we already have some accessibility, some UDL things built into our template. As you can see, we have set out, we have a start here area, and under this area we have a link to the e-learning resources, which includes information about accessibility. And we have some flows set up here for you. And we also have a direct link under support to accessibility, which takes students out to the wiki page that we have created, where they can contact Student Disability Services if they need an accommodation. So we already have some of these things built out for you. What you're going to need to do is you're going to have to decide how you're going to set up your courses and how you want to deliver content to your students, what things are you going to have them do. So there's different formats you can use. Obviously you have face-to-face, and you can use Blackboard as supplement to that. You can have hybrid, which is a combination of face-to-face and online, and then you have fully online, which is basically students going through and completing everything, you know, asynchronously or synchronously based on your course design. So I wanted to point out that we do have some of these things already set up for you, but with academic freedom and setting up your content, you have the ability to set it up and design it the way that you want it to. Any questions about that? All right. Okay, so one of the main resources that I have that's on this presentation is the UDL on Campus. This website is specifically designed and related to higher education. So they have UDL for, you know, K through 12, but there's also been a site designed for UDL on Campus. So under this course design area, you can see some of the things that I was talking about, and they have some. So let's click on learning goals. See, we have the what, the why. And they have different scenarios that you can see, and then solutions. These are just examples of things that they've done based off of learning goals. They're talking about the emotional. See, we have the connections and things here as examples. So this is a great website for instructors in higher education to use. It has the getting started. You can watch a nice little video. And you can talk about this in your department. So this is a website I highly recommend if you're new to universal design for learning or just course design in general for higher education. That way you can kind of get a grasp of what we're actually talking about. And remember, although we talk a lot about accessibility, we're making sure that our courses are set up in a way that everyone can participate and that everyone's getting what they need from the course. All right, let me go back to my presentation. Any questions about those resources? Okay. I'm actually going to put into the chat, I'm going to put in the the link to the UDL Guidelines PDF. That way you have access to it if you wanted to download it. And also you can go out to their page and you can click on specific standards and it gives you a description of each of those. Let me go back to my presentation. Nope. Share files. All right. So I talked about that's the UDL Center that has that PDF available in the specific. They also provide examples. Some of them are K through 12-ish, but they can be applicable in higher education. That's why I provided you with the UDL on campus website. There's CAS, there's AEM, which is accessible education materials. And I'm going to send out a copy of this presentation along with a copy of the recording so that you have access to the hyperlinks, and you can also Google this information when you need to. So that's a basic, quick overview of universal design for learning, and keeping in mind course design when you're setting up your classes, what types of things that you do. You can always submit an RT ticket if you'd like a consult with one of our specialists here in instructional technology. So if you need assistance with setting up your courses, you want to ask us some specific questions about how to set things up. Like I do this face-to-face, but I'm going fully online. You can definitely contact us for that information. Do you have any questions? Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, but I'll stick around.